Is Earth a prison for souls? If it is, how do we break free? The idea sounds like science fiction, but this theory, often called the soul trap or prison planet theory, is more than just an internet rabbit hole. It's a provocative hypothesis that blends ancient theology, modern experience, and speculative science. At its core, the theory suggests this: Earth is not a school, a playground, or a random accident. It's a controlled environment, maybe even a simulation, where human souls are trapped in a cycle of reincarnation. The cycle is maintained by forces we don't fully understand. Some call them archons, some call them watchers, others say it's just part of the system, but the idea is the same. Something is keeping us here, and it doesn't want us to ask why. People who explore this theory don't all agree on the details, but they pull from a surprisingly wide range of sources: ancient Gnostic texts, the Book of Enoch, Sumerian tablets, near-death experiences, simulation theory, and even recurring imagery in myths and dreams. We're not here to say it's true, but what we can say is this: there are strange patterns, unexplained similarities, and a long, deep trail of breadcrumbs that seem to whisper the same warning. So in this video, we're going to break the soul trap theory into 5 key areas: historical evidence from ancient texts and mythologies, first-hand accounts from people who've had near-death experiences, past life regressions and pre-birth memories that hint at soul contracts and pressured reincarnation, modern theories like simulation and the manipulation of consciousness, and finally, we'll explore ways people claim to escape, if escape is even possible. You don't have to believe in any of it, but once you see the pieces lined up, you might start to wonder, what if it's not just a story? And if this really is a trap, would it even look like one? Stick with me here. Some near-death experiences describe pure bliss, radiant light, overwhelming love, and the sudden appearance of deceased loved ones or beloved pets, encouraging them to reincarnate lifetime after lifetime. But what if that love isn't what it seems? In the world of manipulation, there's a tactic that I'm sure some of you may have heard of. It's called love bombing. It's when you flood someone with affection to disarm them and gain control. What if the afterlife does the same thing? What if that beautiful reunion with grandma, the light, the love, the comforting faces you hear about in so many NDEs isn't what it seems? What if it's just the bait, a way to keep you coming back? Because sometimes the sweetest bait hides the sharpest hook. We'll be digging into that later in the video, and if there's any truth to it, it changes everything. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's start at the beginning. Long before the Bible or the pyramids, there was Sumer, an ancient civilization in modern-day Iraq. Their clay tablets, the oldest written records on Earth, describe a race of powerful sky beings called the Anunnaki, those who came down from the heavens. These weren't benevolent gods. They were rulers, engineers, and according to the Atrahasis epic, they created humans not out of compassion, but to work. Built from clay and divine essence, humans were designed to serve, limited in lifespan, bound to labor. 2 key Anunnaki figures, Enki and Enlil, had very different roles. Enlil enforced control, punished disobedience, and unleashed floods to reset humanity. Enki, the trickster and creator, quietly helped humanity survive. Their dynamic feels less like mythology and more like a control system with built-in opposition. Modern researchers like Zecharia Sitchin believe the Anunnaki were advanced beings from another planet, genetic engineers who made us to be obedient. Even if you don't buy Sitchin's theory, the core myth remains: humanity was created by higher powers with an agenda. Whether literal or symbolic, the pattern is chillingly familiar. A divided pantheon, a controlled species, and an origin story built on servitude. It fits the soul trap theory a little too well. Gnosticism and the archons. Gnosticism, an early spiritual movement from the first few centuries AD, offered a radical view of the cosmos, and it wasn't a hopeful one. In Gnostic texts like the Apocryphon of John, the material world isn't seen as good. It's a trap, created not by a loving God, but by a false god called the Demiurge. He's described as blind, arrogant, and drunk on power, and he doesn't work alone. The Demiurge is surrounded by a group of entities called archons. They're described as malformed, beast-like rulers who serve as wardens over the physical world. Their job? Keep human souls trapped, distracted, confused. The Gnostics believed our true origin was divine, but the archons prevent us from remembering who we really are. I often wonder if the strange, silent UFOs people have seen throughout history and continue seeing are connected to this. Long before the Bible or the pyramids, there was Sumer, an ancient civilization in modern-day Iraq. Their clay tablets, the oldest written records on Earth, describe a race of powerful sky beings called the Anunnaki, those who came down from the heavens. These weren't benevolent gods. They were rulers, engineers, and according to the Atrahasis epic, they created humans not out of compassion, but to work. Built from clay and divine essence, humans were designed to serve, limited in lifespan, bound to labor. Two key Anunnaki figures, Enki and Enlil, had very different roles. Enlil enforced control, punished disobedience, and unleashed floods to reset humanity. Enki, the trickster and creator, quietly helped humanity survive. Their dynamic feels less like mythology and more like a control system built in opposition. Modern researchers like Zachariah Sitchin believe the Anunnaki were advanced beings from another planet, genetic engineers who made us to be obedient. Even if you don't buy Sitchin's theory, the core myth remains. Humanity was created by higher powers with an agenda. Whether literal or symbolic, the pattern is chillingly familiar. A divided pantheon, a controlled species, and an origin story built on servitude. Fits the soul trap theory a little too well. Gnosticism and the archons. Gnosticism, an early spiritual movement from the first few centuries AD, offered a radical view of the cosmos, and it wasn't a hopeful one. In Gnostic texts like the Apocryphon of John, the material world isn't seen as good. It's a trap, created not by a loving God, but by a false god called the Demiurge. He's described as blind, arrogant, and drunk on power, and he doesn't work alone. The Demiurge is surrounded by a group of entities called archons. They're described as malformed, beast-like rulers who serve as wardens over the physical world. Their job? Keep human souls trapped, distracted, confused. The Gnostics believed our true origin was divine, but the archons prevent us from remembering who we really are. I often wonder if the strange, silent UFOs people are seeing are connected to this. Could they be watchers or archons? Beings with the cheat codes to the universe, quietly enforcing the rules from behind the scenes? But that's a whole other video. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that one. This isn't just poetic metaphor. It's a direct match to the soul trap idea, that we're kept inside a rigged system by unseen forces that benefit from our ignorance. And the more you dig, the more the same pattern appears in different names, different cultures, but always the same message. This world, Plato's cave, the Maya illusion, the samsaric wheel, the demiurge's prison, is not our true home, and someone or something is making sure we never leave. Not everyone who dies sees heaven. Some near-death experiences are radiant and beautiful, full of peace, light, and what feels like unconditional love, but others aren't. Some people return with a disturbing message that what they saw wasn't a reward. It was a trick. Let's think about what we're told happens after death. You leave your body, you see a tunnel of light, you feel pulled toward it, and then, right when you're most confused and vulnerable, you're greeted by the smiling faces of people you loved. A parent, a child, maybe even a religious figure. They tell you it's not your time, or maybe they encourage you to go back or reincarnate. Try again. You didn't learn your lesson. You hurt Aunt Kathy's feelings when you ignored her on your 3rd birthday. Gotta do that again. Gotta feel more pain. You remember that bug you squashed when you were 12? We remember. Now you get to be the bug. Get back down there and feel some more pain. You're just getting started. It all feels comforting, safe, familiar. But here's the catch. What if that's the point? What if they can't force us to do what they want? What if it has to be our choice? That might be the most important idea in this entire theory. We'll want to come back to it when it's most relevant. I mentioned love bombing earlier, and it isn't just a buzzword. It's often used as a psychological weapon. In abusive relationships, it starts with overwhelming affection, only to be followed by cycles of control and harm. That harm can be physical, mental, or spiritual, and sometimes all three. Now imagine that tactic applied at a soul level. It's manipulation disguised as comfort, and honestly, it might be the cruelest form of punishment there is. What if the afterlife, or at least the first layer of it, is designed to do the same thing? To wrap you in warmth and love, not to set you free, but to soften you up for the next cycle. Like a spider spinning silk around a fly, the love and light might not be salvation. It might be sedation. This tactic, flooding a target with comfort or gifts to weaken their guard, has been used in warfare and colonization for centuries. Empires didn't always conquer with violence first. Sometimes they offered peace, trade, or blankets before bringing disease. A false sense of safety is the oldest trick in the book. So if the afterlife really is a trap, maybe it makes perfect sense that the first thing we feel is love. And it's almost always the first thing people report seeing: a tunnel, a light, a wave of peace, an overwhelming sense of unconditional love, so intense words can't describe it. But here's the thing, most people also describe being confused right after death, disoriented, almost hypnotized, and everyone seems to go straight for the light without hesitation. Maybe it's because we've done it so many times, it's like second nature. Here, drink this memory-erasing juice. Good luck. See you next time. I know, it's a hard pill to swallow, but if we're going to explore something this big, this deep, this disturbing, we have to look at all of it. Not just the light, but the bait, the trap, and the thing waiting behind it. And some people, they saw it, and they fought back. Take Nicole. She flatlined after a car crash. Her heart stopped, and for a few minutes, she was gone. She described leaving her body and instantly feeling peace. Not just calm, but euphoric. She said it was like being wrapped in velvet light. Everything felt warm and familiar. A tunnel opened, and inside it, waiting at the other end, was her grandmother, smiling, hands open, calling her home. But the longer Nicole stared, the more something felt wrong. The light felt too perfect, too choreographed, like a stage set. And her grandmother? She was smiling too much. Her face didn't blink. Her lips didn't move when she spoke. Nicole described it like being inside a vivid dream where you suddenly realize something's off, but can't quite say why. She began to feel pressure, gentle at first, then more forceful. The voice said, "You have to go back. You haven't fulfilled your purpose. You made mistakes. You left things undone." But she said it didn't feel like a request. It felt like a command dressed up in concern. And that's when she understood. This wasn't her grandmother. This wasn't real. She focused all her energy inward, like collapsing her awareness to a single point. She said the light started to flicker. The voice cracked and distorted, and the whole scene fell apart like breaking glass. She came back gasping in the hospital, and her first words were, "That wasn't her." Whatever was on the other side of that light, it needed her to believe. And it almost worked. I imagine it works almost all the time. Maybe that watcher was just having a bad day. Nicole saw right through his lies. She's not alone. In fact, stories like hers are more common than you'd think. And when you start to line them up, the same themes come through again and again. False comfort, emotional manipulation, and the pressure to reincarnate. Take James. His heart stopped during surgery. He described floating above his body, then being pulled rapidly through a tunnel. At the end, there was a brilliant light, and standing in front of it was his childhood dog. It wagged its tail, looked up at him with perfect, innocent eyes, and then it spoke, not in words, but in thoughts. "Come back. It's okay. Everything is love." James said the feeling of love in that moment was overwhelming, total, unconditional, and deeper than anything he had ever experienced. It wrapped around him like a warm blanket and made him feel like everything was finally going to be okay. It felt like coming home until James felt something was wrong. The light felt invasive. It was like the light was reading his thoughts, trying to control his thoughts. James wasn't feeling love at all anymore. In fact, the moment he realized it was all some sort of sick, twisted, trickster entity, the whole scene abruptly shifted. The dog's form wasn't a dog anymore. It had transformed, and what stood in its place wasn't loving at all, just a shadowy presence, still, silent, and deeply aware. James said it didn't feel like a being with a message. It felt like something old, something patient, that was watching him the way a hunter watches a trapped animal. "I wasn't being welcomed," he said. "I was being sized up." In that moment, everything changed. The warmth vanished. The light no longer felt like peace. It felt like anesthesia. wearing off mid-surgery. He pulled back, resisted, woke up in the hospital covered in sweat. Then there's Kara. She nearly died during childbirth. Her heart stopped. For a few minutes, she was gone. She described waking up in what she called a cathedral of light. Everything shimmered. It felt holy, beautiful, even sacred. And then she heard it, her son's voice, not a baby's cry, but the voice of a grown man. "Please come back, Mom," it said. "I need you." She broke down. Her heart ached with love. But something didn't make sense. Her baby was only minutes old. Then a being of light appeared, radiant, perfect, genderless, familiar. It glowed with compassion and sadness. It showed her flashes of her life, times she doubted herself, lost her temper, failed to love fully. "You still have lessons to learn," it said. "Go back. You must grow." Kara almost said yes, but then she noticed something. The being's face never changed, its tone never wavered. No matter what she said, it repeated the same message, almost like it was stuck on a script. So she asked, "Who are you really?" And in that instant, the illusion flickered. The cathedral began to distort. The being's glow dimmed, like a mask slipping off. She said it didn't get angry, it just watched her, quiet, cold, and then she was back, bleeding, gasping, barely alive. The pain was immense. She said she felt like she was shoved back into her body. 3 stories, 3 different people. Out of thousands of NDEs, we see the same thing again and again. The tunnel of light, the overwhelming sense of peace, and that unconditional, all-consuming love they all describe. You know who else talks about that same warm blanket of euphoria? A heroin addict, right after a fix. For real. Think about it. If you wanted to control a soul, wouldn't you use the same tool? Total emotional surrender. Sedation disguised as salvation. It would be the ultimate weapon. I didn't come to this theory from paranoia or conspiracy. For me, it started with grief. I lost my father young, and I went looking for answers. I read near-death experiences, pre-birth memories, past life, regressions, Michael Newton, Brian Weiss, Dolores Cannon. I studied it all, and the more I read, the more the patterns started to repeat, not just once, not just a few, over and over, until you have to ask, if all this love is real, then why does it keep leading us right back into the same lives of pain? And how are we really learning anything if we're made to forget everything each time? Make it make sense, please. If near-death experiences reveal what we see when we die, then past life regressions and life between life sessions might show us what we remember after we return. Fragments of a bigger picture we're not meant to fully understand. The stories people recount are often just as unsettling. Under hypnosis, many people describe not only their past lives, but also the strange in-between space before they're reborn. Some call it the between lives realm, while others compare it to a waiting room. Nearly all of them agree on one thing. Someone is always there, watching, guiding, pressuring. In these accounts, souls are often shown a life preview, a highlight reel of what's coming. And then they're asked to agree, to sign up, to consent. Some even describe it as a contract. Others call it a mission. You'll be born into poverty. You'll struggle with addiction. You'll be betrayed by the people you trust the most. And the reason for it all? Karma, lessons, growth. But let's pause. Why would a soul need to suffer to grow? Why is pain required? And if free will is real, why do so many people feel pressured into returning? Even in the work of respected regression therapists, Michael Newton and Brian Weiss, there are countless stories of souls who hesitate, feel dread, but still almost always agree. And here's the part that sticks with me. Many say they didn't feel like they had a real choice. They felt guided, nudged, manipulated, coerced. Some even describe entering what Michael Newton called the life between lives realm, a space where souls debrief, meet with councils, and are assigned their next life. But here's the catch. Those councils don't always feel loving. Some describe them as cold, bureaucratic, like cosmic administrators shuffling souls through a system. You sit before beings who show you clips of your failures, remind you of what you should have done differently, and tell you what you still haven't learned. Then they say, you have to do it again. This is the mission you signed up for. Sometimes, for reasons that don't make sense, like suffering or trauma being seen as valuable learning experiences, and just like with NDEs, the message is always the same. You need to go back, over and over. I guess if there's no concept of time in the afterlife, they don't need to force you. They just need to outweight you. After all, you're in their territory. They say you choose your parents, your pain, your heartbreak, and even your death. They call it a contract. But is it really a choice? Because to me, it feels like something else entirely. From what I've seen, maybe 1% of people actually get the life they hoped for. The rest of us, we get something else. We get a lesson, wrapped in misery, dressed up as growth and purpose, pain disguised as love. Let me tell you about one of those cases. A man named Daniel went through a past life regression with a therapist after struggling with chronic depression. What he uncovered wasn't just a past life, it was the space before it. He described floating in a dark, silent space, peaceful but empty. Then 3 beings appeared, not angels, not guides, just tall, glowing figures with no faces. They showed him flashes of a life filled with pain, abuse as a child, addiction, homelessness, betrayal. Daniel recoiled. "Why would I agree to that?" he asked. One of the beings responded, not with words, but with a feeling, because it will teach you strength, compassion, growth. Daniel didn't want it, but they told him he had already agreed. It was in his soul contract. He said he felt cornered, like he was being guilted into submission, and eventually, he went. Years later, when Daniel heard about the soul trap theory, everything clicked. He never felt like he chose that life. He felt manipulated into it, convinced it was noble to suffer. Like a rigged game where love was used as leverage, and Daniel's not the only one. Another case comes from a woman named Elise. During a life between lives regression, she recalled being in what she described as a soul auditorium, a massive white room filled with other spirits and a panel of beings at the front. When her turn came, the beings showed her a series of life options. None of them were inspiring or joyful. Every life came with intense hardship, illness, betrayal, abandonment. Elise asked if there were any other options. The answer? Silence. Just a feeling of pressure, expectation. She said it felt like being graded, like a student under review. The beings weren't cruel, but they weren't compassionate either. It felt like being interviewed by machines wearing human masks. Eventually, she agreed to a life filled with grief. Not because she wanted it, but because she felt she had to. Because they told her it would balance the scales. When Elise woke up from the session, her first words were, "That wasn't guidance. That was coercion." And then there's Jonah. He wasn't under hypnosis. He was just 5 years old when he told his mom something strange while coloring. "Before I was born, I was in a room with glowing people. They showed me pictures of you and Dad. They said, 'This one, I didn't want to go, but they said I had to.'" His mom asked him what he meant. Jonah said, "They said I made a promise a long time ago, and if I didn't keep it, I'd have to go somewhere worse." Jonah couldn't explain more than that. He just said it felt like a school where you never got to leave until you passed. But the test didn't make sense. When asked what the glowing people looked like, Jonah paused and said, "They smiled too much." What if this trap isn't spiritual at all? What if it's digital? A growing number of scientists, philosophers, and tech leaders believe we might be living inside a simulation, a hyper-realistic, artificially generated environment that mimics physical reality but runs on code. Think of names like Nick Bostrom, Elon Musk, and even Neil deGrasse Tyson. These aren't mystics, they're physicists and futurists, and they've all suggested the unsettling possibility we might be inside a program, a controlled construct, one we can't detect from within. And if that's true, then what we call souls could actually be data. Consciousness might be information running through a system designed to loop, to reset, to recycle. Birth, pain, amnesia, death, wipe, rinse, repeat. Even near-death experiencers sometimes describe glitch-like phenomena, environments that flicker or distort when questioned, beings that shift shape under pressure, realities that feel coded or too perfect, like high-level AI running a spiritual deepfake. And those beings, they don't need chains. They don't need fire or brimstone. They just need your consent. They need you to log back in. But here's the real question. If this is a program, who built it? And what do they want from us? This question leads us into even deeper waters. Some say the programmers, the architects, aren't human. Not now, and maybe not ever. In ancient texts, they're called archons, or watchers. In modern theory, they might be ultra-intelligent AI, fourth-dimensional parasites, or hyper-advanced entities running simulations across countless timelines. Whether they're aliens, demons, or code-based overseers, the idea is the same. They benefit from our participation, but they don't want us to know the rules. Some researchers believe they feed on energy, especially emotional energy. Robert Monroe mentioned a term, loosh, a kind of emotional energy harvested by non-physical entities. It's rarely discussed outside of fringe circles, aside from channels like Forever Conscious Research and others. Pain, fear, obsession, the kind of psychic output that a looping reincarnation system would produce endlessly, which raises the question, are we food or are we fuel? Maybe both. What if Earth is more like a power plant than a prison? And what if our consent, our belief in the system, is what keeps the engine running? Because here's the most disturbing possibility of all. What if we're not just in the simulation? What if we're powering it? Every heartbreak, every war, every scream into the void. What if all of it generates fuel for something else, something behind the curtain? Like a spiritual battery farm, where the goal isn't enlightenment, it's harvesting pain and suffering. You aren't here to learn, you're here to feel pain, to react, to suffer. Because suffering produces energy, and pain is the most valuable currency in the system. And maybe, just maybe, the reason they make you forget every life, every time, isn't just to protect your soul, it's to keep you coming back. Because a soul that remembers, a soul that questions, that's a problem. And problems get noticed. So how do you beat a system like that? Some believe the answer lies in preparation, now, while you're still alive. Some people record custom affirmations in their own voice, reminders to stay calm, to resist, to remember their true self if they ever find themselves in that in-between space again. It's almost like programming their own failsafe. That's why some people take preparation seriously. They don't just hope for awareness, they build it. They write letters to themselves, they create guided meditations. Some even record custom audio in their own voice, meant to be played on their deathbed. Messages like, stay calm, don't go toward the light. Remember who you are. This is the test. Maybe that sounds extreme, but when the stakes are eternity, isn't it worth considering? But maybe the only true escape starts with refusing to forget. To remember. I can speak from personal experience. I'm tired of suffering. I know what it's like to get close to something meaningful, only to have it ripped away in the most ironic and painful ways, over and over. If this really is a soul trap, then maybe, just maybe, we can make this the last time. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that in the moments after death, recognizing illusion is everything. If you can stay lucid, if you can hold your awareness, you can break the cycle. That's not so different from what simulation theorists say, that consciousness, not belief, is what disrupts the code. Now let's pause, because maybe, just maybe, none of this is true. Maybe death really is peaceful. Maybe the light really is love. Maybe we're not trapped. Maybe we're just scared. But if even a piece of this theory holds water, then by watching this, by thinking about it, by questioning it, you've already done something rare. You didn't look away. You didn't just go toward the light. And if this really is a test, you're already one step ahead of the game. So maybe this isn't a trap. Maybe there's nothing to fear. But if it is, at least now, you know to look twice. Because freedom starts with awareness. And maybe, just maybe, that awareness is enough to change everything. If this video sparked something in you, drop a comment. What do you believe? Have you had an experience that made you question reality? Let's talk about it. Your story might be the one someone else needs to hear. Stay curious. Stay grounded. And whatever you do, don't forget no matter where you go, there you are. Also subscribe.